This is Charlie, and I will present on the scientific revolution. Later, John will present on the Enlightenment, but we're going to start with the scientific revolution. The scientific revolution was a result of the Renaissance. During the Renaissance, people began to question authority in the world about them. People began to question the theories of the ancient Greeks like Aristotle and Ptolemy. Other famous Greeks were rediscovered during the Renaissance, and people began to think for themselves. This questioning and thinking led to the rejection of the Bible as the sole scientific truth. People were no longer afraid of questioning authority. This leads to one of the main points of the scientific revolution, the scientific method. The scientific method, primarily developed by Francis Bacon and Rene Descartes, was one of the most important innovations of the scientific revolution. The scientific method is a cyclical process involving questioning, testing, and reflecting. Francis Bacon urged people and scientists alike to experiment for themselves and draw conclusions, a key part of the scientific method. Rene Descartes relied on math and logic and rejected the old theories from the Greeks. One example of an ancient theory smashed by science was the geocentric theory. For a long time, people believed that Earth was at the center of everything. They thought that the sun and all the planets revolved around Earth. The questioning of this theory was highly controversial as the Church taught this theory as truth. Nicholas Copernicus believed that the sun was at the center of everything, and Earth and the other planets revolved around it. This is known as the heliocentric theory. He waited until the end of his life to publish his theory for fear of attack by the Church. Later, Johann Kepler came out in support of Copernicus's ideas as well as elliptical orbits. Also, Galileo Galilei, an Italian astronomer who built his own telescope, validated Copernicus's theory. Galileo also smashed Aristotle's theory that the sun and planets were smooth. Later, Galileo was summoned to Rome to appear before the Inquisition, where he was forced to admit that Copernicus, Kepler, and himself were wrong about the heliocentric theory. Other examples of ancient knowledge being proven incorrectly were Galen and his study of human anatomy. Galen's work was taken as fact in the Middle Ages. However, Galen only studied pigs and not human beings. This knowledge that he gained was applied to humans. Later, Andreas Vesalius proved that Galen was wrong and that pigs and humans are, in fact, very different. There were many other less controversial figures in the scientific revolution, such as Isaac Newton. Isaac Newton was an English physicist who discovered the law of universal gravitation. This basically says that every object is attracted to every other object. Another important scientist in the scientific revolution was Zacharias Janssen, who invented the microscope. Anton van Leeuwenhoek used the microscope to observe bacteria and other bodily cells. Gabriel Fahrenheit invented the thermometer and has a temperature scale named after himself, the Fahrenheit scale. Anders Celsius created another temperature scale named after himself. Robert Boyle, known for his discoveries in chemistry, is regarded as the father of modern chemistry. Boyle's law explains how volume, temperature, and gas pressure affect each other. The discoveries made during the scientific revolution would change the world forever. The scientific method is taught in every science classroom and used in every science lab around the world. Our modern temperature scales come directly from the scientific revolution. We have modern microscopes and a greater knowledge of human anatomy. After the Renaissance, people were inspired about the world around them. People were not afraid to question what they thought was fact. Now, John will talk about the Enlightenment and its effects on Europe and the world.
Around the 18th century, a European movement in which thinkers attempted to apply the principles of reason and the scientific method to all aspects of society arose. It was known as the Enlightenment. It all started when Thomas Hobbes and John Locke, two English thinkers, came forth with their conclusions about the structure of governments. Thomas Hobbes expressed his ideas in the book The Leviathan, and he believed people were naturally selfish and wicked. Hobbes created a social contract by state of nature in which people define and limit their individual rights, thus creating an organized government and society. This is also known as an absolute monarchy. On the other hand, John Locke believed that people could learn from experience and improve themselves and that they had the natural ability to govern their own affairs while looking after the welfare of society. Locke's government was based off a modern democracy that would protect the three natural rights of humans: life, liberty, and property. When the Enlightenment reached its peak, many philosophers came along with the views on society and governments. Voltaire wrote many literature pieces that used much satire against his opponents. He made frequent targets of the clergy, the aristocracy, and the government, and his sharp tongue made him and his enemies at the French court. Voltaire never stopped fighting for tolerance, reason, freedom of religious belief, and freedom of speech. Next was Baron de Montesquieu. He devoted himself to the study of political liberty, and his study became a part of his most famous book, On the Spirit of Law. Montesquieu proposed that separation of powers would keep any individual or group from gaining total control of the government. And this is also known as checks and balances. Lastly, Jean-Jacques Rousseau was another figure. He disagreed with most Enlightenment figures, and he believed civilization corrupted people's natural goodness. He called for a direct democracy in which people agreed to give up some of their freedom in favor of the common good. These thinkers, along with many others, contributed to the society greatly. The Enlightenment left a legacy, and this legacy created a belief in progress, a more secular outlook, and the importance of an individual.